someone who has applied for early access or somebody who is running a pilot program in semester 2 of this year. And so we are very grateful to have you in the room with us today. And we want to encourage you to please feel free to ask any questions you have at any point in time. So a little bit of a progress update. We're thinking about the general Brightspace migration in 4 phases over here on the left-hand side. A kind of faculty consultation phase that we sort of were in the heart of earlier this year, moving into an early access phase, which is about where we are now. And then starting off with our pilot phase, which will be going live in semester 2, and then large-scale migration from the beginning of 2023. And it looks like at the moment that large-scale migration is going to start with first-year courses, although there are other courses that will be involved in that as well. So where are we on this slightly more detailed map? The technical implementation, the tools, integration into Brightspace, the SILT and ICTS orientation and training, and the pilot process for faculties is all underway. We've gently started on the community development and training sessions, and we're working towards clarifying, finalizing our pilot courses for migration. At the moment, this number has changed a little bit. We're a bit closer to 40 pilot courses at the moment, spread over all the faculties, which we're very excited about. So there will be people in your faculty whose courses will be migrating in the pilot phase, so in semester 2 of this year, which is nice because those are people whose courses you can get a little peep at. And that's a lot of the people in this room, and we would encourage you to share your experience with your colleagues. And then migrating, as I said, first year courses 2023 with some variation in faculties that want to add additional courses to that. And then the timing of the other elements of the migration is still sort of in discussion in various ways. Okay, please feel free to pop up a hand at any point if you have any comments or any questions or anything you would like to clarify, or even just unmute and ask. Okay, so that's general progress update. A little bit of a conversation around community development and training. And there are going to be parts here where I'm going to ask you specifically for some of your ideas, if you'd be willing to share them. So the aim for the community development and training program for Brightspace is quite narrow. Ideally, by the end of the training, we want our range of users, and we'll talk about who those are in a moment, to confidently navigate, function, and shape their particular UCT instance of Brightspace in order to support their learning and teaching needs. We'd like this to be ideally a strong focus on development in terms of collaborative learning, supportive networks, and being responsive to participant needs. So part of today's session is about you telling us if this part of the plan makes sense or doesn't. So in terms of who we're looking at training, broadly, this is our kind of pool for people in the community who need specific Brightspace training. For today, we're focused on this course conveners group up here, course conveners, lecturers, teaching assistants. So that's kind of within the course bubble. Historically at UCT, administrative staff have done things like create Vula sites for particular courses. That's increasingly going to be a centralized Brightspace function, i.e. an administrative user within Brightspace will do that. So admin staff won't need to raise a site in the same way. What they will need to do, however, is some training around if a department runs gradebook, or if the admin staff run the tutor, run creating tutorials and that kind of thing. And so they'll have some training around that. Of course, we have a big tutor pool at UCT who have historically used the LMS for a range of activities, and they will have some training on that probably towards the latter part of July for the pilot groups and into early August. And so one of the things that we'll be looking at from our pilot staff is, what does your tutor complement look like? And then we're looking at very short offerings, largely kind of self-paced or self-accessed offerings for guest lecturers. And for now, we're not going to chat in today's session about the student training around Brightspace, although that is very much on our list of elements to be aware of. Okay, some very quick chat about training types, and I'm going to keep us looking at this left-hand column for a second. Up at the top of this is the items that require the least synchronous time, that require the least time with a facilitator. All the way to the bottom are the ones which are like the most facilitated, which require the most time, kind of commonly shared time. And they range from activities like simply learning resources for staff, so one-page guides and recordings, very short videos and so on, through to demo courses, which I imagine that many of you have had a look at already, and Thomas will highlight when we get into the Brightspace site today. A DIY course migration process for anyone who kind of needs to go work at their own pace and in their own way, webinars, consultations, an intensive program, and a design studio in Brightspace, which is a short course that staff undertake. That's a substantially longer period of time. That's about a month with about 5 hours a week. The Brightspace intensive program is what we're imagining that most departments will focus on. And that's sort of a 3 hours over 2 days or on 2 separate days. So either a Monday, Wednesday, little gap in between to work on things, or a Tuesday, Thursday, or even on subsequent days if that's what people would like. So can I just check, and this is a kind of an open question to you before we move on to anything else. If you look at the kinds of training and support that are available here, is there anything that you would like that's not on this program? Or is there anything on this program that you think you don't want to see on the program as options? So it's unlikely that somebody would take Design Studio and do an intensive. They're more likely to choose one or the other. It's also unlikely that people will, but you might want to, for example, do the intensive and then pick up 1 or 2 odd webinars on specific tools or specific issues. So before we go any further, does anyone have any comments or questions or ideas about that? And I see that somebody has cleverly done a little thumbs up. So if you're okay with this, just give me a quick thumbs up. If you're not okay with it, or if you have a question or a comment or a suggestion, then please feel free to put a hand up and let us know, and we'll happily. Okay, I see some thumbs ups happening. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to move us on then. Some sort of communities of practice around early adopters. Exactly, Daniela. So we're hoping that what the intensives will do will be to offer people an opportunity to meet colleagues in their faculty who are also working on Brightspace, and for those people to begin to get to know each other, and then to meet thereafter kind of as that community develops. So Daniela, the SILT liaisons will be people who will be involved with the intensives, just as a shorthand. Okay, so moving on from there, folks, training possibilities. Ideally, what we're looking at here is that in terms of those very same forms of training that will be available to people, we're imagining that different categories of participants in our space will need more or less access to those. I'm sorry, I just need to do something quickly. My table just moved a little and it's made everything very skew. Okay, so what we're imagining is that staff, for example, will need access to the full range of learning resources. Our tutors will have a slightly more restricted range of learning resources, admin staff will be somewhere between tutors and teaching staff, and perhaps our guest lecturers and our students are more likely to work in a kind of just-in-time sort of framework around their Brightspace training and learning. But we are planning for different categories of user, different categories of participant in the space to have different kinds of access depending on what they need. And then just a little comment on the kind of what of the Brightspace Essential training. So we're focusing very much in terms of this essential training around what people will need in the short term to create or get onto a course site, navigate that course site, build content on that course site, create opportunities for communication and engagement and activities for students and so on. And so we're imagining these kind of 6 sessions, these 6 key areas of knowledge around what staff will need to understand in order to make sense of their course sites and navigate them and use them for teaching and learning. Okay, so I'm going to pause at that point because I think that what I want to do is give us as much time as possible in the demo space. Before we go any further, any comments or questions? Renee, please feel free to unmute.
Thank you. Shonali, will you be coming if, for example, we phone you and ask you to come in for a morning into a division? Will you be able to send someone into the division and have the whole division be taught how this is going to work? Do you envisage that you'll be able to be accessible for training like that?
So we definitely envisage doing some forms of bespoke training. Working in a division is less likely to be wholly practical because most divisions won't be migrating at one time. They'll be migrating sort of over a 2.5 year period. So Renee, we must chat about a little bit further what your migration plan is, and then align your training plan with that. But yes, we are imagining doing some bespoke training, either at faculty level or department level, depending on people's migration plans, really. Is that okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so because I'm just looking at my courses, there's, I've got like 3 short courses and diplomas running and postgraduate things, mainly on the postgraduate side. So it will not really be in the undergraduates area, but definitely on the postgraduate side. And, it will be good if the whole division sit together and learn how to do this kind of thing.
Renee, just remind me, what division are you
in? Interdisciplinary palliative care and medicine.
Right. Okay, I'm going to make a note. Palliative care and medicine. We're going to come back to you and figure out see what your migration plan is and how to map that onto training. I know that Health Sciences said to us that they were doing a slightly different plan they wanted a different plan. So they want to migrate their courses, their undergrad first 3 years in 1 year, and then second 3 years in the next year. I'm not sure what the plan is for Health Sciences for the postgrad courses. So I don't want to make any assumptions about what that is. I haven't been in on those discussions myself. So we're going to come back to Renee, hopefully with a little bit more detail and figure that out. But yes, I understand that for many departments, having people trained together is a useful thing. Claire, is the plan to migrate all undergrad and postgrad courses for 2023? Definitely not at this point. The plan for 2023 is to migrate all first-year courses and then something of a mixed bag of courses in addition to that, depending on, in many instances, faculty strategies and department strategies.
Yes, sorry, Shonali, I actually missed. Sorry, can I?
No, go for it. Please feel free.
So I missed a key word in my question there. Is the plan to migrate all undergrad and postgrad first year courses for 2023? And the question really is, I know that you've previously said that for undergrad first year courses, you're hoping to migrate so that they start from Brightspace in the first place in 2023. But is that first year postgrad courses as well? But having said that, I can hear you've just spoken that health sciences have a different plan. So I'm also health sciences. So I suppose I'm following Renee with my question of what's the plan for postgrad courses within health and their migration? And I don't think
I'm going to make a note of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our Faculty of Health Sciences liaison and the migration team to take this up with your faculty and make sure that they're clearly communicating that through the structure. I've made a note of both Renee and Claire. I must write down Claire's surname because we have multiple Claires of these. Both of you to be CC'd in on that.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Renee, Renee, intensive trainings. We are not imagining that we will start intensive training until after the exams are underway, simply because at the moment, many people will be winding up semester one or still teaching through semester one. So we're aiming to start them during the exams period. But again, this is going to be one of those scenarios, and Renee, that you're an important case here because although technically I think your course is a humanities code course, it's a service course for somewhere else.
Yep, correct.
Remind me?
It's a MAM code course.
It's a MAM.
So experienced faculty administrator.
Yes, okay, so it's a science course and we need to just make sure that you guys don't get left off the intensive training list because I know you serve different spaces.
Thank you.
Cool. So let's make a note of Renee, and it's Renee Rix, and it's a MAM coded course.
Yeah, numeracy center is probably worth writing down.
And I'm going to put down I was going to write that down. Numeracy center, and I will get Lauren Butler to check in with you.
Thank you.
About intensives, because what we're hoping to do with the intensives, as I said, is to try and group people by faculty or departments so that it feels meaningful.
Perfect.
Yep. Cool. Thank you so much. Folks, any more comments, questions, ideas, thoughts, concerns about the training aspects? Happy to hear them. Now's a good time. We can still make it better. Okay, in that case, I am going to mute myself and invite Thomas. Thomas, would you like to introduce us to some wonderful elements of Brightspace?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, hi colleagues. So in this demonstration, I'm going to be taking you through Brightspace from two perspectives, the staff perspective and the student perspective. And this is very important because they do have slightly different designs. And it is very important that you as staff first come onto the platform as a student, so you can see what it looks like from their perspective and then make designs appropriately. I am not going to be easily able to keep an eye on the chat. So Shonali, if you can just interrupt me if there's a question comes up. And anyone at any time, please feel free to just unmute and just ask. Even if I'm in the middle of a sentence, just ask. We'll keep things nice and flexible. So you've all been added to a site called Brightspace Staff Orientation. I just checked now to make sure you are all on, and you are indeed all on. And this site is here to show you some of the basics of Brightspace and Voda from a staff perspective. It doesn't go into a lot of the very more complicated functions, but it does have some of the basics. So I'm going to switch to my student view, which is what you will see when you arrive on the site. First thing, you'll notice there's a little pop-up here. This pop-up will appear every time you log onto the system until you manually dismiss it. And what it is a welcome module. You can create these when you make your sites by just making sure your very first unit has the word welcome in the title, like this one does. And here you can see there are some information to go through how you've been added to the learner role in Brightspace, and how we're going to not call this Brightspace in a while. There is a renaming process. For the moment we're calling Brightspace, it will change. Just like Vula is a Sakai platform, we will have something which is on the Brightspace platform. Over here, some information about navigation. So once this pop-up is down, you'll see there's a navigation bar, and here's some information about that navigation bar. Your course home, which I'll show you in a moment, which just shows is your kind of landing page for your course. Very roughly equivalent of the overview tool in Vula.
Excuse me.
You, go ahead.
Hi, Thomas. I just want to follow you exactly step by step, and I've logged in and my screen does not look like yours. It looks similar, but it's not. I'm just concerned that I'm actually looking at the right thing.
Would you like to share your screen and we can take a look? If you are able to share your screen,
Yeah, should in a moment.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So this is the Brightspace homepage. So this is kind of like the Vula homepage before you've gotten into a course yet.
Right.
On your left, under that My Courses, the white box called My Courses, you'll see the courses that you've been currently added to.
Yeah.
So you have a sandbox site, which is for you to play and do work in, and we are currently in that Brightspace staff orientation site.
All right.
Yeah, that one, the mushroom.
Okay.
And if you click on the mushroom, now you are in, eventually, you will be in on the Brightspace course, on this particular course. Yeah. And now you can see the welcome pop up. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Can you just stop sharing so I can, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. That's actually very useful now. Everyone knows how to get to where we are. We'll talk about the content tool in a lot of detail in a moment. We'll get there in a bit because that's probably the biggest thing. And once you are ready to no longer see this pop up, you can click dismiss. If you just exit out of it, it will pop up every single time until you have manually hit that dismiss button. So that's just a piece of information for you. Once again, we are on the student view currently, so it's slightly different from the staff view. Over here at the top, you have your navigation bar. These are the different tools in Brightspace. This is the rough equivalent of the left-hand sidebar in Vula. So Course Home obviously takes you to this page here, which has a number of widgets on it. We are still customizing what widgets will appear. So we're doing some work on that. This is likely to change in a bit, but these widgets are things like announcements, quick guides to the course, to-do lists, if there are any to-do lists, profiles, if there's an instructor profile, and the list of the different modules within the course. Over here are the various different things students can do. They can either visit the content, which I said we'll get to in a bit. They can conduct their various activities, which are things that they do on the site, hold discussions, take assignments, take quizzes. They can check their course info, which includes their class list to see who's on the course, calendar, if they're a member of any groups, what announcements have been made, and their progress to the course, check their grades, or look at the help documentation. Very briefly go to the class progress because the student has no progress yet. And you can see here is a way for students to check their own progress to the course. So whatever grades they've received, what kind of content that they have visited on the site, if they have posted any discussions, if they have done any assignments, if they've done any quizzes, if they've completed any checklists, surveys, and so forth. And you as a lecturer will also have access to these kinds of metrics to see who has got to what point in the course, and of course things like you could do in Vula, check who's been in discussions, who's submitted assignments, and so forth. So at this point, pretty similar, slightly maybe a bit more minimalistic than Vula, but it's a pretty similar design in general. When it comes to the content tool, here's where things change a fair bit. The content tool is something like a mixture of the lessons tool in Vula and the resources tool and a navigation platform. So this is something where you're just going to have to kind of need, work the dough several times to get your head around this. But this is where students can theoretically access everything through the content tool, and this is where all the content is built, or at least can be built and organized and scaffolded with instructional text like we like to do. Here you can see we have a first module, which is really what we've just done in that pop-up. And by clicking launch module, we can see, and navigating with these right-hand bars, the various different pages within the module. And these were just exactly the same pages that were in the pop-up. And you can see now we have a little marker that we've completed it. And if we go back to our content by clicking on the back, Brightspace actually shows the students how far they have progressed by saying what's been ticked off. And you can see now we have a next unit, which is unit 1. So we're going to launch that. And this unit, which I'll advise you to go through as staff/students, just compares Brightspace and Vula. So we're looking at the differences between the platforms and similarities. And we've got some stuff on relanguaging these two platforms. So if we go down here, we have a list of the tools in Vula that you might be more familiar with and the different tools in Brightspace. And you can see they're mostly similar, but there's a couple of differences. A note on comparing them, these things are fundamentally the same type of thing. They're both digital learning platforms. They are far more similar than they are different. Just like Canvas and Blackboard and Moodle are all more the same thing than they are different things, but they have some specific differences, like the content tool, which is useful to know. I won't go through this in great detail, but kind of the core things to go through is that Brightspace is mobile first, which means that through the Brightspace Pulse app, all of your content in Brightspace is designed from the get-go to be very accessible from mobile devices. And in fact, students can download full courses and work through them offline, entirely free from Wi-Fi, come back, and when they have access to Wi-Fi again, it will update itself. We are still exploring that option, but it is something which is going to be very useful for students who have long commutes, and they can still do some work on their phone, or if they have a tablet, on the tablet, even if they don't have access to the internet. We've shown some of the ways in which students can track their progress a bit more easily through the platform, and that lecturers can also get more detailed analytics and a bit easier to use the course analytics tool in Vula. Brightspace also has a built-in video tool, and you can actually experiment with these tools in the discussion activity later. But Brightspace makes it very easy for you to record yourself without having to go into a separate tool, like a screencasting tool, whatever. You can actually just film yourself right away for instance, creating introductory modules or introducing students to an activity or an announcement saying, hey, I want to talk to the class instead of just typing for whatever reason.
Hello, Thomas.
You, go ahead.
In terms of making videos, is it quite easy to extract that video, do a little bit of editing and put it back again? Or once it's made, is it kind of the only editing tools are available in Brightspace?
We haven't explored that thoroughly at this point. My feeling is that the inbuilt video tool is more for someone doing like a quick note or something like that. So it's not really an editing.
Friends, Thomas, and that's about it.
Yeah. So it's more something to see, let the students see your face and talk to them rather than producing sort of high quality lecture videos.
I also would not make anything that I planned on reusing ever in that space, because for you to edit it, you're going to have to take it out of Brightspace, put it into a full-scale editing tool and get fairly fancy. I still think that if you're going to make like a kind of classic lecture video, to consider PowerPoint to MP4 for like maximum reusability.
Yeah. Okay. And the last major thing is Brightspace in its design philosophy is much more chunked than Vula was. And we'll show you some examples of that. But broadly speaking, Brightspace likes in its platform design, likes to break things into smaller pieces and do them one by one, rather than have, in fact, a page like this, a very long page. Generally speaking, the way it works and the way it's optimized for its more advanced functions is to break things into smaller pieces. It's not required, but it's how the platform is set up for its sort of maximal usability. I'm going to switch over briefly to the staff view. So here's the student view, and we'll go back to the content tool for a bit. And you can see we have this vertical layout with our different units and so forth. The staff view is slightly different. We have these same units, so the welcome unit and unit 1, but the editing view is just a little bit different. So this is why it's good to have the two different views to bear in mind as you're designing how this looks. This content tool here is kind of the core of Brightspace. This is the beating heart of it. And we're just going to very quickly talk about some language. These colored bars at the top here are units. And units are created by this new unit tool over here. And units are best used really just as headings. For some reason, when we start trying to get some of the more fancy things in Brightspace, like working in the HTML and so forth, it doesn't play so nice with these unit models. So these are best to quite literally leave as sort of unit 1 and put it in a nice big heading and leave it at that. It's something very, very simple. An example of that is this welcome to Brightspace over here. Just that. Underneath the unit level, we have optionally these lessons. And lessons are of the same kind of thing as a unit. They are dividers. They are ways to group other kinds of content, as you can see over here, into a holding space. I've gone a little bit overboard here and put in some text and actually used a table with a colored background to make a more colorful design here. But the best way to use these seems to be simply as headings. And in the student view, these are sort of navigational guides. You can see these over here are these lesson things over here. So to be very simple, go ahead, Shani.
Quick question from the text chat. Can someone on a Brightspace site as staff toggle between student views and staff views?
Yes, they can.
Can you show that?
Over here, by clicking on your profile, you can view as learner, and that will take you to a learner view, which you can see is the learner view.
Thank you, Thomas.
Sure. And to leave that, of course, we just then cancel that and we go back to the staff view. So yeah, a very useful tool to always check what your course looks like from a student perspective. Now, within the content the tool, this is where you start assembling things or indeed even authoring content. So I've got a unit over here. I've got some lessons, which are these essentially folders for content. And within one of these, I can start creating content. And there are two ways to do this. We can either create new. You can see those are my lessons, those drop-down foldery things. I can, in fact, go straight into creating an assignment or discussion or a quiz or a checklist. Surveys, which is like the poll tool in Fuller, and also like the course evaluation tool. So we don't have a specific course evaluation tool, we're using surveys. Web link is just a link to a page. So if you want to embed the student support page that's produced centrally at Fuller, or you want people to go directly to a specific software tool or whatever, which lives on an external website, you can use that. And kind of the main thing, which is the HTML documents. It's a terrible, terrible name. We've shouted at Brightspace many times for giving it probably the worst name they could. But this HTML document is basically the lessons page in Fuller. So it's a place to organize content, to describe it, to put instructional text, to put messages from you as a staff member to your students. That's what this HTML page is. And all of these things over here, you see with the little, what is that, globe icon, I guess? All of these are HTML documents. When you create an HTML document, you can just start typing right away. And of course, you have the rich text editor, much like you had in Vula. You can format the text, you can highlight it, you can go and access the HTML if you're feeling very brave. And over here, you can either insert an image from your computer or from your resources. It's called manage files, but it's a resource file. You can put quick links into other kinds of tools like assignments or to a checklist or to a discussion or to a quiz. So the Vula equivalent here is basically the add content feature. You add link to an assignment or add link to a discussion. That's what this quick link thing is. Or you can insert stuff. Really, this is insert media. So inserting images or videos from either external tools like YouTube or Thing, or from your own files, or there that add video notes. And because this computer doesn't have a webcam, I can't show you, but you can record yourself directly speaking to your students right here. And once you're ready, you can just click next. I'll show you one of those in a moment.
Thomas?
Yes.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Just to backtrack ever so slightly, do you have to have the full 3-step structure?
No.
One that you like unit and then lesson and then HTML file, or can you just have like a unit and then your lessons using the HTML file underneath it?
Absolutely. You can see over here, this is a unit with an HTML directly beneath it on the same.
Okay, so you can have or
level.
not have that middle level.
Yeah, these are entirely optional.
Okay.
You could think of these as sub-pages in Vula. That's probably the closest analog. But they are completely optional. You can go straight into unit, and then you do need to at least have units.
Yeah.
But then you can go straight into authoring content, putting discussions in, putting in HTML pages and so forth. So these are definitely optional only.
Okay, thank you.
Thomas, while you're there, and you may not want to deal with this straight away, maths editors.
Maths editors. This is something I myself am not 100% certain about. I am on the sort of commerce humanities law side, so we don't deal with that, but there is a maths something in here somewhere. I think it's under here.
I know there is, I know there is one, but I, like you, am not wildly au fait yet. Leanne, we're going to come back to you, I think, with a little bit more detail.
But yeah, it's under this plus sign over here, and then there's the equations tool, which has graphical, LaTeX, MathML, and chemistry equations over there.
Okay, no, that looks cool. Thanks.
Sure. Oh, by the way, when authoring, you can just expand out so you can actually see what you're doing rather than this horrible small cramped little window. So yeah, the HTML pages, like I said, are the lessons pages. They're a place to talk about your content, like we've got here. Introduce things, chat to your students, provide instructional text, and so forth. Now, I'm going to switch over to the student view because that's a little bit neater for the purposes of my discussion. Oops. I'm going to very briefly show you a comparison of a Vula page, which I had just taken basically screenshots of and stuck in here. So you can see here is a simple but heading Vula page. We have our various content blocks, and we have links to our discussion forum over here, to a reading over here, some more supplementary readings, to assignment, and to a quiz. So this is what a Vula page might look like. There are two ways of translating that content into Brightspace. We can, like in this page, have one long run-on page with link, a discussion forum, some instructional text over here, and a link to said forum. Introduction to some readings and a link to said reading, which then opens up, as you can see over here, a link to said reading. Similarly, instructional text to an assignment and to a quiz. We are, by the way, working on making these templates over here a little bit prettier, a little bit more like what UCT looked like. So if they look a little bit straightforward, that's what that is. So it's very possible, and this is all done through the, by having created all of our stuff beforehand, all of our assignments, and then using that insert quick link to link to our existing for instance, discussions over here, or to our existing, where's the quizzes button? Quizzes over there. Perfectly adequate way. It is, however, not quite what Brightspace is really designed for. So it works, but it's maybe not. It's maybe more like a Vula design philosophy. Brightspace a bit more chunked. So in Brightspace, instead of having one long run-on page, it works a little bit more according to the platform. And remember, also, if you're accessing from mobile, these smaller things are easy to access by mobile by chunking the content, having an HTML page, and then linking directly to discussion. Okay, it's going to be maybe a bit easy to see in the start view. Okay, Marianne's answering. So over here, we have that single long run page. Over here, we've taken that single page and we've pulled it apart into different chunks. So we have our introduction to our discussion and a link to our discussion. We have our readings, introduction to readings, and then this actual reading inside the platform. Likewise, assignment, link to assignment, and so on. These things, by the way, appear as actual. They just take you straight to the assignment in Brightspace, as in the student view. Staff view looks, once again, a little bit different. It is really up to you how you want to take your existing content and reorganize it. Whether you want to use the long run-on method, which is going to be probably the simplest, or to chunk it. This is very easy to do when creating, by the way. So if I had created something from scratch, I just want to create new. Okay, I want an HTML document. I'm going to give it a very basic template. You can see here, there's template list. I'm just going to use the basic page. I'm going to say, I don't know. Oops. Isn't always the way when you try and show someone. Anyway, and type whatever I want in the readings, and then wait for it to finish. And then I'm going to say, okay, from that, I'm going to start adding from my reading list that I've already uploaded to my site. And I'm going to put in this thing over here, or I'm going to add in my Foucault document directly beneath it. So it's very, very quick and easy to build content through the platform, entirely just using this content tool. Either by...
Sorry, Thomas. It's me again with a similar question. So essentially then, is that using the HTML pages as the lesson, the activities of a lesson, and using that second level of page as the lesson header, title page?
Sort of. With these lesson pages and unit pages, we really recommend, and I'm showing you the wrong thing by putting text in here, is just using them as a title. Like just literally just that, like we did over here, where it's just the title.
Yeah.
The HTML pages, in terms of learning design, we would like to see something more like this, some kind of text, either introducing the reading or saying, this is a full textbook, only read chapters 1, 2, and 3, something where you are providing some instruction as well as...
I'm sorry, I'm rushing because I've got to go, I'm sorry.
Sure.
But I would include the instructional text, but that HTML level page, so like the third level of page, then is being used not as the lesson page, i.e. all the activities on that page, but as the individual activities of the lesson, with then the second level of type of page is just the title of that lesson. Is that right?
I think maybe we would need to chat about it more when you have a bit more time. Using your actual course. Yeah, but broadly speaking, these can introduce the thing, and then the actual activity, like the discussion, follows directly after it. Yeah, so they can be quite short and brief, and then you go to whatever the thing is, the discussion.
Whatever the thing, Okay.
And yeah, Claire, I'll drop you an email afterwards, and we can chat maybe further with your actual course in front of us.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thanks. Okay.
Sure.
And
Can I
Thomas,
also ask a
while you're
question?
there, Renee has a question.
Oh,
There
sure.
we go, Renee, go for it.
Thanks, Shani. So Thomas, in Vula, we currently have quite long run-on pages, as you're showing. And better is to have these chunked up pages. Totally get it. If we import things from Vula, because I understand that courses can be imported into Brightspace, what then happens? Do we then automatically end up with the long-end page? And if we want it chunked, we have to chunk it ourselves, or will it automatically do the chunking up? Talk me through that. Thanks.
We are experimenting with that migration process. The last time I checked in with them, it actually did the chunking, but not always in the neatest and nicest way.
Okay, cool.
I would have preferred a single run-on page, I think, for that moment. But yeah, we are working on trying to get the migration as close to the Vula site in Brightspace as possible. Chunking or not chunking isn't right or wrong.
Yeah, sure.
It's more about when you start getting to the more advanced features of the platform, then the chunking becomes a little bit better because let's go back to my student view very quickly. So if I'm a student and let's say I've gone to this, the non-chunked, as soon as I've accessed the page, it says I've done that. But in that, there were a whole bunch of quizzes and assignments and so forth. And this tick doesn't really tell me much. Whereas this chunked version, I can say, okay, I've only got to the reading part of this lesson. Now comes the discussion. Now comes the test your knowledge quiz. So from that aspect, from like self-tracking, chunking is definitely better.
No, fully agree.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we're working on the migration process and we'll have to see because at the moment it's not working quite as nicely as we would have hoped.
Taz has said in the chat that it depends on the number of text boxes one is used, which is not always consistent. I mean, having designed a number of this,
kind of. Yeah.
It's gonna. So I mean, whatever you do, I think we will still have to look at whether it's working for our course.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
It's going to be a little bit easier when we start making entirely new courses on the platform, because then we can start off doing it right. Or right for Brightspace, which is not bright, it's just bright for a different platform. Okay, I realize we have not that much time, so I'm going to move through a little bit faster. In this, please let me launch the lesson. In the site that we've created, we've provided a couple of different learning activities that you can do as a student. So there is a discussion activity, and you can see here, this is the discussion where it's actually working. So previously we had some text, and I clicked the wrong button, but we go straight into the actual thing. So students don't have to migrate to different tools. They can just stick in the content tool for their entire learning experience. And you can see they can discuss and start, for instance, replying to people directly or authoring new pages directly into the tool. So I can start here and do whatever I want to do. We've also included a brief quiz test, once again from the student perspective, just so that you know what it's like to take a quiz in Brightspace as a student. And similarly, we have, there's the actual quiz itself, and the instructional text for the assignment, and the assignment itself. None of these are compulsory. Don't feel pressured to do them. Obviously, it's just very useful to know what students actually see when they look at a platform. A word on those tools, and you can see these are, if I wanted to just check the quizzes for my course, I could go either as staff or students just to quizzes and see all the quizzes. They are very similar to how they worked in Vula, particularly assignments is almost identical. Quizzes are pretty similar. You have the same range of questions, multiple choice, short answer questions, matching items, and so forth. Like Vula, you can time or not time your quizzes. You can set them to open or close at certain dates. You can set Turnitin for assignments. You can put rubrics on your assignments and on your discussions. So in fact, this discussion activity is in fact marked with a rubric. And if we take a look at our first introductory forum, we can see, in fact, one of our, where are those replies? One of those discussion threads, we actually have someone who has used that video upload tool to record themselves And that's just a click of a button. Very straightforward. That's why I haven't spent a lot of time. These things are the same as they are in Fuller. They'll, of course, they look a little bit different. You need to, for instance, when you're going to assignments, the settings for creating new assignments are, instead of a drop down on top, they're on the left here. So choosing if this is an individual or group assignment, you know, putting restrictions that this can only be an image or a video file or so forth. Your evaluation feedback here, if I want to add a rubric, or I want to make the mark anonymous, they're all on the left here, turn-ins over there. And so, I mean, on the right-hand side, sorry, over there. But very easy to work your way through them. It's the same as in Fuller, just a little bit more visually attractive. What else? Announcements are much the same as they were in Fuller. You can set, create announcements to be set at certain dates. And to certain people. I'm going to check the questions in a moment. Two things I would like to show, one because I know Leanne's in the room. Brightspace has a much more advanced set of features around release conditions. So release conditions are, make this available only when students have done something else. In Fuller, that was just one long line of things. So students had to do every single required item before they got to required item number 8. In this one, I can set conditions very specifically. So for example, this whole module called Brightspace Page Templates, you'll see is not visible to my student view. I can't see that module at all yet. So no unit 2. But if I were to go and finish my checklist, you see this release condition says only once people have completed the this checklist and the specific item on this checklist does this module become visible to them. And likewise you, because this is your course, you would have to go and complete this checklist over here before you're able to, I can't see it, before you're able to see this module. And you can do it very kind of sophisticatedly. For instance, if someone gets less than 50% on their first quiz, open up a new unit for them called remedial resources, which has remedial resources. And all your students who are acing the quiz, they don't even have to see it. It can just be a little branch on the course that's only open to students who meet certain requirements, or are members of certain groups, or who have ticked this particular honor pledge so that they can then access the quiz, and so on. I'm going to take a whiz through the questions just to see if there's anything unanswered. Is there anything specifically unanswered, Shonali, in the chat?
No, Thomas. We were just having a chat.
Okay, got some sort of chunking. Yeah, migration concerns, trust me, we know. Yeah, so as Taz said, we're importing into holding space first, and then we kind of migrate that into a live site. Brightspace does have a lot of affordances for centrally created content. So we in SILT are working on orientation module frameworks for you that you can then just import into your course if you want, and then edit them accordingly with your correct information. And those can even include things like assignments and quizzes and discussions, theoretically. Probably better to use something simple like a checklist. But it can be, we can do things at, for instance, departmental levels that weren't that easy to do in Fuller, to make courses. For instance, everything in Faculty of Science will link to Faculty of Science handbook. Kind of those kind of centrally managed resources are a little bit easier to use in Fuller, so a little bit, I mean, in Brightspace, so a little bit less stress on you as academics having to recreate those things. No problem, Renee. Any questions? Anything people would particularly like to see or queries they have about the platform?
Thomas, can I ask a question?
Please do.
So when you're setting up the course and you want certain pages to open up on certain dates, can you make that generic? Can you say the first week of the course this will open, the second week that'll open, so that the next year you can just roll it out again?
Okay, I think so is my answer to that. Let me just edit this. So those release conditions in terms of time is this availability dates over here. This is start and end date. There is somewhere in Brightspace a mass feature to just adjust dates. So like you move all dates 3 days forward or 2 days back or whatever.
Okay. Okay, that's
So there
cool.
is something like that. We haven't tested that out yet, but it seems to work. Or
And
at least
then
it's part of the functionality. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that looks great. Can I just ask one more question about the progress bar? Is there an overall progress bar where they can see straight away visually, I'm 3/4 of the way through, or I'm 10% behind where it should be?
So if we go as a student to our class progress tool under course info, that there, I think, is that bar that you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So it's completed certain items, and you can see over here, I haven't completed, I've only done that one introduction, but I haven't completed the other kinds of things to go. So
that's brilliant. Thanks.
Definitely much easier. From staff perspective, you can use that same class progress, but looks a little bit different. You can see each student and how far, what they've accessed, how many items they've completed, what grades they've been assigned, and so forth.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to do this than it was in Vula.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks.
And while I'm here, you can actually create things called intelligent agents. We don't have time to go through it, it's a bit of a more advanced feature, but it's something like the release conditions in which you can specify, please send out an email next week to all students who have not yet completed quiz 1, or who have completed quiz 1 but got less than 30% or whatever.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Much easier than once again you could do in Vula, which is the Dawn task tool.
Yeah.
Thomas, quick question while you're there. From Renee, is it possible to import a single unit or HTML page in Brightspace?
A single unit into an HTML page?
Or HTML page in Brightspace. My thought is yes, and it's kind of via the embed function, but not everything embeds equally at the moment.
Yeah. So you can create a new web link, that's that embed. And when you create that, you can either choose open new window or embed on the page. We're still playing with this. It seems that it has something to do with if it's HTTP or HTTPS, if it likes embedding or not. And you can't, of course, embed things which are behind any access walls.
Thomas,
so go ahead.
I think Renee's asking, so when you import lessons, it imports the entire lessons. The question is, can you just import like one unit?
Oh, okay, between courses.
Yeah, so not a web-based thing. Can you just import one HTML page or just the orientation units and stuff? Yeah, they always do
that. So this is, okay, I rushed past this, but this managed course admin is basically your site setup. Copying another org unit, if you choose this, you can search for the course that you want to access. Oops. And you can choose which specific tools you would like to import. I don't know why it's not giving me. There we go. Import components. Oops, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I'm getting myself all lost.
Thanks, Thomas. I mean, you don't have to show all the details now. It's just something that hadn't worked out in Vula. I was curious if it's possible here. I mean, you talk about you're going to set up a orientation thing, which we can then hopefully use in our individual courses. So can we just import that single little unit?
You can import a single checklist or one quiz or 2 rubrics, but not the 3rd rubric, 1, 3, and 5 lessons. Yes, you can do granular little imports. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, we are off time. I'm willing to stay as long as people want, really, answering questions, but I do know that often a lot of people will need to leave. Shani, is there any closing stuff you would like to say? And then I can just stay on the call for anyone who wants to ask specific questions.
Just to say a couple of things. Number one, remember that you're still currently messing around in your sandbox site. So don't expect it to behave like a full course. Just be aware that it is a sandbox site. Be aware of what Tass put into the text chat around in terms of the course migration. Your course will migrate into a holding site where you will have an opportunity to engage with it, check it out, move things around, work with the SILT folks on making sure that it looks the way that you would like it to look. And then it gets I'm going to say made available for student access, because it may be copied across. I'm not quite sure, Tasneem, what the exact process is. So I think for me, that's just a thing to bear in mind, that you're in a kind of play space until your faculty or department kind of decides what their training is going to look like. So if certain things feel a little bit uncertain at the moment, it's because you're not working in a full course context yet. And so not all your resources are up there for you. I see